I'm afraid the sun keeps going in and out, so excuse the fact that that's happening, but the first important thing to remember is that prevention is better than cure. So if you're starting with a brand new garden or a brand new planter, then if you can prevent those slugs and slug eggs from getting in there in the first place, that's going to be much easier than having to get rid of them once they're established. Now, we've got a planter here that's been established for a couple of years now, so the slugs are already in there making their greedy way through our plants. So unfortunately, we don't have that option, but what we could have done if we were starting from scratch with this is put some copper tape around the edge of the planter. It's a brick built planter, and the best thing to do, we've tried copper tape before in the past, hasn't worked perfectly because there was one missing ingredient we didn't use, but you need to run 2 lines of copper plate close enough together so that the slugs can come in contact with both of those lines at the same time, and then you can add a battery pack, so a 9-volt battery pack. Basically that means that as those slugs try to cross those 2 lines, it creates a current that creates a deterrent for them, and they will turn back on their way. The most important thing to remember about this though is it's no good doing that on an already established pot or established place where there may already be slugs or slug eggs hiding inside, because what you may actually do is end up having the counter issue, and you may end up deterring them from exiting the space and keeping all your slugs in there and creating more of an issue. So just watch out for that, but ideally if we could start again, that's the one we go for. Next fairly straightforward option you've got is actually just manually checking for them and removing them. So when you're going out to do your watering, or you're just going out to look at and enjoy your plants in general, have a good look around, see if you can find any and get rid of them. You can put them in your bin, in your compost, or feed them to the birds, whatever you want to do, but just stop them from thriving and try and control the population that way. The next option you've got, which is a step up from this, is to trap them. Now, slugs like the wet and they don't like the sun, because they don't like snails have that shell to protect them, so they're not sunbathers, so they tend to come out to feed at night or on cloudy days, and when the sun comes out they hide away. So if you create something that they're going to hide away in, this may be a shop bought slug trap, or you could put a pot, you could put something in it that they're attracted to, like beer, believe it or not, and fruit and things like that, something that will bring them to the space, then it's going to make then removing them manually a much easier job, because you can just come along and check the trap and take them out that way. The alternative to that is actually to create fewer places for them to hide and to thrive. So make sure you remove things like dead matter, because they really like feeding on that. Make sure you don't have too much clutter and you don't give them too many opportunities to hide away, and then they're going to be less attracted to your space in the first place. Another thing you can do to generally make your environment less hospitable to slugs is to water in the morning, and then by the night time when they like to come out, then that will have nicely had a chance to dry up, and it means it's just a much less easy environment for them to travel across. They like to slither across the wet, they don't really like moving across dry soil as much, so that'll just help overall to make it a less slug friendly environment. Another thing you can do is actually take measures to encourage other wildlife to come into your garden that feed on slugs. So things like birds and hedgehogs and frogs will actually do a really good job of reducing the slug population themselves. So you can add bird feeders, you can add ponds, hedgehog runs. The more wildlife you've got in your garden, the more likely those animals are going to feed on your slugs and help you out. Something else you can do, which often is actually people's first port of call for controlling slugs, is to get the chemical pellets. Now, we've tried this in the past, but we've always been quite reluctant to use them, and I think increasingly a lot of people are, because obviously adding chemicals to your garden isn't ideal, particularly if you're growing vegetables that you're then going to end up eating. And of course those chemicals don't just have an impact on the slugs, but they have an impact on the other wildlife as well, and the animals that are going to eat them, so they can negatively impact the health of the birds, the frogs and hedgehogs and other things that come into your garden. So really we're all trying to avoid doing things like that now, so it's an option, but I'd say not an ideal one. Of course there are organic pellets on the market now, and this is something that we've tried previously. So you get these woolen pellets, they seem to be quite a popular option. Now when we tried those, we didn't actually find them very effective. If you've had an alternative experience with them, please let me know in the comments down below. But because previously we spent a load of money on those, bought a load of those, and didn't really get on top of our slug problem, it's not something that we're at this time going to try again. Which brings me on to the option that we're actually going to try out this time, and this is nematodes. Now, nematodes are a living creature. They're very small, you can't see them to the naked eye, and there's thousands of different types. They vary in whether or not they're good or bad for the environment, but there's one particular one that is the nemesis of slugs, basically, and if you use that, then slugs can't really survive in their presence, and you can just start adding them to the environment and the slugs won't continue. So We've gone for the shop bought option. Now this was £26, it's worth just saying that. So this is the Slug, but hopefully we're just going to need this one treatment, and because this is a contained space, we're hoping that that will completely control the slug problem and we won't have to then do it again, because it does say on here that it only lasts for 6 weeks. So I think if you were trying to treat a whole garden with this, it would be a really expensive option, but it is suitable hopefully for much smaller spaces like this, and I will update you in 6 weeks time and let you know how we get on, whether or not we've got on top of our slug problem, in the comments down below, so keep an eye out for that. But it's a biological slug killer, and basically you just add water to it and then add it to your planter and let it do its work. If you've got a bigger space to treat but you still fancy going down the nematode option, there is another alternative, and that is that you can actually produce, kind of like farm your own nematodes effectively, and then you can have a continual supply of nematodes, and it's obviously a lot cheaper. So once you've got your initial nematodes and you've made sure that a slug is affected with a nematode, and you can tell that by looking at them, I'll put a link down below to how you can actually identify a slug that's affected. If you put that together with other slugs, that will infect the entire population of slugs. And if you put that in a container with some water and some organic matter like lettuce, then it will start creating water that will be the same as this product here, basically, that will be infected with the nematodes, and that you can then use to control your population of slugs. So it doesn't have to be an expensive option, but it really just depends on what kind of area you're trying to deal with the slugs in. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do this in just a moment, and you can let me know if you've ever done it yourself and how you've got on. I'd love to hear about that, of course. One other thing that I'm sure you've heard about as an option for treating slugs, and that is coffee granules. Now we looked into that as an idea as well, because it seemed like a nice, easy, organic idea. And actually, under EU regulation currently, it is illegal to put coffee granules in your garden to treat slugs. Now, as far as I can understand, it's not because there's any major concerns about the impact, it's more just about controlling what people put on their gardens and making sure that unauthorised substances aren't getting kind of mixed in with gardens. So I don't think it's really that there's any real serious worries about it. Now, of course, the UK has come out of the EU now, so it may be the case that we're free to pour as much coffee on our gardens as we want, but I can't imagine it's the top of the list of the government's priorities at the moment. So we'll wait and see whether or not we hear any updates about that. If you know something yourself, please, once again, feel free to share it in the comments down below. But let's give this stuff a go and see how we get on. So I hope that you found these tips useful, and I hope that your garden hasn't been ravaged by slugs too badly this year. For us, it seems to be the hollyhock and the lupins that have got particularly badly attacked. Some things have remained intact, but obviously the more they thrive, the more the slugs thrive, the more they're going to eat. So the sooner we get on top of the problem, the better. If you've got any of your own slug removal tips, of course, please feel free to share them in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new here, please do subscribe. I would love to see you again very soon. But that's it for today. Bye bye.